startup that was doing consumer electronics. They were building bracelets for protection of women, and they're called Flare. Yeah, they just got acquired. So I worked as a mechanical engineer there, learned about mass production and kind of working with contract manufacturers from a point of very low leverage, which is a struggle that most startups have. And then from there, I actually went as a mechanical engineer to Commonwealth Fusion Systems, which is another local startup. They're based out of MIT. They're trying to build the world's first fusion reactor, which sounds all crazy and science fiction-y. But I was employee 32 there, and so it was really just seeing it from the ground up and where it's come. It's, I think, 450 people now, which is crazy. So kind of seeing the concept to prototype to production and like kind of seeing the whole product life cycle through that was super interesting to me, and seeing it in a way that you can really interact with the product as much. In big companies, you usually serve a very specific purpose. In startups, you can do a bunch of stuff. So that's what I loved, and that's why I continued going into startups. And then afterwards, I went to another space company in the area that was working on ion thrusters for satellites. So all of that kind of culmination brought me to meet the managing director of Techstars in the Boston area. And they asked me to be a mentor to companies that were working on hardware and trying to actually build a product and scaling it from just like a sketch on a piece of paper to actually putting a prototype into a lab and then getting it out into the world and working with manufacturers and scaling it up, which is where a lot of them really struggle. So I became a mentor, and then through working with a lot of hardware startups, I became a mentor in residence for the Techstars Paris office. And the reason I pivoted to them was because they work primarily in sustainability, and given the dire need for some level of climate action, I wanted to kind of devote my time to that. And as a result, I got a lot of companies that were interested after the program to work with me and wanted me to be an advisor and wanted me to put out content that would help them scale their product in the hardware realm. So that's why I founded Critique Development, so that I could do that advising. I'm also, I'll do a little ad, I will be releasing a podcast, and it's called The Builder Circle, and it's truly to kind of alleviate the fog that comes with becoming an entrepreneur, especially if you're not a technical person. Trying to build a physical product can actually be really difficult, and you don't know where to start. So I intend for the podcast to kind of be a curriculum that startup founders can follow, so that they know how to approach negotiations, how to go about their designs, so that they can actually eventually scale it. Because that's where the valley of death that you might hear in the entrepreneurship space happens, where you have a plan, you have a great idea, you're super excited about it, and you're like ready to go, you're like, but then you get stuck, you're like, okay, who's gonna even talk to me? How do I go about this? Who do I even contact? How do I even find a vendor? So kind of these very aggravating and stressful thoughts I'm hoping to alleviate through the podcast. So that's my little pull there.
Excellent. I love doing these panels because I learned so much. So, and now I know who to send entrepreneurs that need that kind of advice, where to go. So hi everyone, I'm Sheila Ryan. I am very happy to be here. This year I am working as a mentor in residence here at the Build Lab, so working with a number of student teams and helping them along their innovation pathways journey. It's been a lot of fun. I think you'll quickly realize that all of our backgrounds are extremely different, but I think you'll probably also realize that we've all done many different things in our either very long or very short careers. And that's something that I hope that you take away, that there's a lot of different things that you can do in life. And so I haven't been a traditional entrepreneur. I'm currently an investor in startups and early stage companies. I guess my entrepreneurial journey started in high school because I was part of an organization called Junior Achievement, and I don't even know if Junior Achievement still exists, but some of the few people in the audience who know what that is. But it introduced me to business. My family had been in science and technology. If I had never been part of Junior Achievement, I probably would have been a biologist. So because I was in junior achievement and started to learn about business and creating a company, I went and did a business and finance degree. And from there, I joined a computer company that once upon a time in Massachusetts was one of the biggest companies in Massachusetts, and it was a startup once, and it was the second to IBM. It was called Digital Equipment Corporation. And I started my career there as, did a financial development program, and after that I went to business school and became a consultant in the payments space. Before payments, before Venmo and PayPal, and before anybody knew what payments were, before they even accepted credit cards at supermarkets, right? I know you guys, all of you just carry a credit card or a debit card, no cash. This was a very unique experience in the world. So I was a consultant for a decade, became a partner at that consulting firm, focused on payments. And then afterwards I left and I joined as an executive of a payment processing company. And then from there I came back to Boston, and once again Boston had become this huge ecosystem of startups, and that's where I got involved with Golden Seeds, which is a national angel investment organization that focused exclusively investing in women-led companies. And I particularly wanted to join them because in so many of my careers and so many of my jobs, I was the only woman or the only woman executive, and I wanted to really give back to women and help them advance on their journeys. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm sure we'll learn more as we go.
Hi everyone, I'm Christine. The advantage of being last is that I can be very brief. But thank you so much. I appreciate you guys all hosting this and celebrating Women's Month. So as Emily mentioned, I have been in venture capital for the past 15 years with a degree in English literature from BU. So very, very unexpected, and to this day, sometimes I look in the room and I'm just like, what am I doing here? But what's great is that this path has been beautifully circular, and I think that if you don't really know what you're doing and you have anxiety and you kind of look at your peers and you say, gosh, this person knows what she wants to do, don't worry about it, you just need some time and surround yourself with like really good people that you can learn from. And I think that's kind of the question that I was looking to answer, particularly when I was at this crossroads of, should I be with this and join this venture capital company, or should I continue with my literary arts? And I literally had 2 job offers, and I was like, what should I do? And so what I decided was, okay, I think that I'm just going to put myself in with this VC firm, because even though I don't know anything about it, everyone is like really creative and really smart, and their website is like beautifully designed. Like, this is how naive I was. Their website looks great, so maybe they're super creative. But it ended up being that way because we are the probably first venture capital company that started off with a nail salon concept. We also incubate companies as well, and we're mini Lux. If you ever want a manicure on me, just let me know. But basically, I think that my entrepreneurial journey really started also with like the story of my parents. The story is that my parents came over from the Philippines with $1.50 in their pocket. But my mom's sister was already here. She was able to get a job and then eventually became head nurse at her hospital. My dad started a company, and you know, the funny thing is that he became a consultant as a foreigner to other business entrepreneurs. And so that seed kind of really showed me that entrepreneurism is taking the best out of your limited resources. And you can all raise your hands when the question asks who's an entrepreneur here, because I think we're all just trying to figure it out with the resources that we have. And if you can, you know, kind of just look and see who are those good people that I can surround myself with, and what can I learn from them, and be a mentor and be a mentee and have that sort of authentic relationship. It kind of doesn't really matter where you work or what you do, as long as that passion is there and you have that people surrounding you. So that's kind of been a guiding force in my career. And thankfully, I can also say that I've kept up with literary arts, because right now I'm co-chairing Boston Book Festival. We're also looking for interns. We're on Handshake, so you can go on there and check that posting out if you're interested in civic engagement, and you know, really see ourselves as a platform to have open dialogue and conversations around relevant ideas that are put forth in books and literature, things like That's my turn.
Thank you. Christine, would you like to start? Would be the first one for the next one.
Because I'm not brief, okay.
So, I guess after listening to all of your stories, I feel like we should all like take our first step and try new things, like take new initiatives to learn about like what we are capable of, or like be resourceful, use the limited resource that we have to find for new connections, and just really step into it. And we will never know that we could do it in this entrepreneurial, like innovative ecosystem here in Boston. So my next question is more relevant to women. I believe most of us that has acknowledged that there is like gender disparity in no matter which kind of career. And there's a research, according to Mass Challenge, there is 92% of the VC partners in the United States are male. So which leads to like a lot of female funders when they are funding business that is not familiar with that male VC, like people they are not familiar with, they get less fundings. So my next question is that, what are some challenges that you feel like being a female they will face in the entrepreneurial world?
Yeah, if anyone wants to help me write a white paper on this, then let's definitely work together. There's a lot of unconscious biases that we, as women founders, women VCs, women in business in general, honestly, with any sort of boardroom, conference, or presentation situation where you are giving your own point of view that we face. And I unfortunately have so many stories of this, but I think that, you know, the more that we can shine light on this problem, the better. I think the main thing is that women don't necessarily own their story. I hear a ton of pitches from women entrepreneurs where they just jump right into their business plan, as opposed to telling me, this is the reason why I'm the right person to be leading this company, because I face this problem and it's personal to me and I know that I can do it. And this is my experience and this is what I'm doing to move forward. Even just having that overall framework and beginning with chapter 1 with that and your own story is so powerful, and I think that women are afraid to own that because they feel like, okay, there's men in the room, then unconsciously they want to kind of check box like, I'm the right person financially, and these are my projections, and this is what I think about the market and all these things, where it's really more like a human first way to build products and services. You're there to serve the people that you're selling whatever it is that you've created. And so I think being able to really own your story and like understanding that your own unique point of view is something that's super important.
So when I started as an angel investor 10 years ago, the percentage of venture dollars that went to females was somewhere in the 2.5%. 2.5% of all dollars. Last year it was 1.9. We're going backwards. So not a good thing. So that's one of the, for those of you in the audience that are entrepreneurs, you'll face that challenge. Doesn't mean you can't win. You definitely can win. But it's hard to raise money. Cynthia said that. So that's definitely one thing. Why do women have such a hard time? I think what you said is true. There's so many people in venture capital that are male. So I love that Christine has been in venture capital for 15 years as a partner. We need more women to go into venture capital, more women to be partners. And you know, that'll slowly change. It's maybe it'll go back up to 2%. Maybe by the time you all are sitting on this panel, it'll be double that. So that's one of the biggest challenges. I think I echo what you say, because we see a lot of, obviously I meet with a lot of women entrepreneurs and work with them and mentor them and listen to their pitches. I think that one of the biggest challenges, and I certainly will admit that I faced this very early on in my career, is confidence. And I think that women sometimes have lack of projecting that confidence, and that comes across when they're meeting with investors or when they're pitching. So if there's one thing that you can take away, it's that you should own what you do, be confident what you do, and project that to whether you're making a pitch, whether you're making a presentation, whether you're making an introduction. So.
I completely agree with everything that's being said, and I'll write that white paper with you if you want. So for me, I mean, I have kind of a double whammy where I am in the engineering field, which is also male-dominated, and business world, which, as we've heard, women get less investment and so on and so forth. Overall, there's definitely unconscious bias, there's conscious bias, there's a bunch of stuff, and I agree with the confidence part for sure. One thing that has served me well is that I have very actively not rejected myself when walking into a room. You hear all these statistics, you hear a lot of challenges that women face, and what happens sometimes is that it's valuable to know that so that you kind of prepare yourself when you're going into it, that you're confident, but oftentimes it can also be discouraging to know all of this data because you feel like the entire world is counting against you. So what happens is when you walk into a room, when you're like raising your hand in class or when you're raising your hand in a boardroom, you are doubting yourself, you are second guessing if I should speak, that idea is probably not great, oh, that's a dumb question, I shouldn't ask. Like, the internal dialogue is everything, and one big advice that I would give to anyone in the room is, one, don't outsource opinions about yourself, and two, don't reject yourself, because the world is like, there's a lot that's counting against what you're trying to do. You need to be your best advocate and just go in with the attitude of, I'm going to ask even if it's dumb, I'm going to give my ideas even if they don't pan out, and just continue to go, because oftentimes what will happen is that your question is likely not dumb, and your ideas probably have way more value and they're more calculated. So they will actually be received much better. It's just that first initiative is so important, and I feel like that's where women tend to wheel back themselves, and so don't do that, is what I would say. And that's served me well in my career. Have I been scolded? Have I been undermined? Absolutely. But it's just, you kind of still putting yourself out there. I saw other female colleagues start doing it. It really, the positive reinforcement spreads. So you start to lead by example, and then it's really rewarding to see. So this is not quite answering your question. I'm just going into like advice mode. But basically, like, to fight that unconscious bias, to fight the fact that things are working against you, really starts in your internal dialogue. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, again, I agree with a lot that's been said here, but I wanted to take a step back. What are the challenges? I think that was the main question. Okay. And I guess I want to say, take it a little bit higher, that it's not only in entrepreneurship where we're facing these challenges as women. You know, some of the challenges that I confronted that go back a ways. As I mentioned, I designed semiconductors in Japan, and I can remember, I'll just say a short story, but I was on a team with 4 guys and me. We were designing a microprocessor, and our Japanese lead, for lack of a better word, came over and he'd give all the information to the guys. And I would be, do you think I'm sitting, doing my nails? What do you think I'm doing? And literally, I had to rely on the U.S., they were a bunch of U.S., Mitsubishi hired a bunch of U.S. engineers to go over there and do work in their semiconductor design facility. And so I had to rely on them. So that hasn't, that was years ago, showing my age, but at the same time, I don't think, like you've said, we're going in the wrong direction as far as investment. So I think it's an issue that it permeates not just startups, but everything. And I think one thing I say is I've done some keynote addresses about entrepreneurship, and entrepreneurship, in my mind, it's a mentality. If you look at anybody who's been super successful in the world, would they say they're an entrepreneur? A lot of time they're saying they're a businessman with a businessman, a businesswoman with ideas that they feel like they can change the world. That's what people like Steve Jobs have done. And I think that you have to have passion, you have to have perseverance. I always, one keynote address I did, I coined the word proof, and for every word, every letter, I said, what do we have to be an entrepreneur? And, you know, passion about what you're doing, and that comes across when you, I don't know, maybe you VCs and investors can say when you are passionate about something, and I think a lot of, you know, women have the excitement and the passion and can show that. I think that's really great, and you have to believe it. You know, everyone's saying believe in yourself and have the confidence. And one thing that I think is extremely important, I don't know if you've ever read the book Believe It by Jamie Kern Lehmer, the woman who started It Cosmetics. She got turned down so many times. She got told that no one who looked like her would ever invest in her business. She got bought out for $1 billion by L'Oreal. You know, she is a killer person, and she, you know, she just would not take no for an answer. And I've seen that myself. I was in my fashion startup in 6x7, you know, that I've created now. I was at a fashion trade show in Atlanta with my co-founder, and after like getting no, when we tell our story, she sat down, she said, I can't do this anymore. And I said, yes, you will. Because that's what it's all about. You cannot give up, and just have that perseverance, like Jamie Kern, like we have. You have to really believe in yourself and have the confidence that I can do it, and not let it get you down to the point where you stop. If you believe in it and you have that passion, just keep on going.
Amazing. Thank you for the great advice. One thing that I want to point out, from the same Mass Challenge research, they actually found out that over time, startup funded by women actually perform better than male-funded startups, which, like, in average, they generate a 10% more cumulative revenue than male-funded ventures. So my next question is that, what do you think that there are some unique strengths that you have as female leaders, and how has being a female influenced your success in decision making?
I guess, I don't know whether I want to cut it along the male, female, or whatever, because it's just, I think, you know, there's a male, I mentioned about passion and perseverance and believe in yourself and all that. That can be a woman, that can be a man. One thing that I think is somewhat unique, but men do this too, but the amount of things that women historically have juggled in life. You know, they're the mother, they're the person, the chef, the cook, and this has changed. That's why I say it's kind of, even though it's Women's History Month, I'm not sure that I want to say that it's only women who do juggling. But I think that historically has been a trait that women juggle so many things and have to like put up with so many things with family, with what they do, that I think that ability to multitask and figure out what to prioritize to make it, to be successful, and where to go and what to do, I think is a trait that's not unique to women, but historically has been something that women carry with them, and I think that has helped what I do. I feel like I'm always still juggling. I think we're always juggling, but men can do it too.
I agree. I definitely wouldn't say that being a woman has like any benefit to anything. That I feel like any gender identifying person has the ability to be a business leader, a engineer, an entrepreneur. But I will say one thing is that as the data shows, it says like women-owned and funded businesses tend to produce better results. The reason is because they're held to a higher standard when investment happens. And so it's always, I mean, there's a lot of articles that are written about this. When in a pitch environment, women are often asked more about what could go wrong and what their backup plans are and like what their contingency plan is, whereas men are asked about the vision and mission and the positives. So that kind of shows the I guess I'm exaggerating, but kind of being like, oh, things are likely going to go wrong with your business, what are you going to do? Whereas with men, it's like, things are going to go really right, what are your plans of a crazy expensive exit? Like, we're so excited to hear it. So I think due to the ridicule and the standard that women are held to, women work harder because of the inequity. So I could just say that that's maybe slightly different. I've met a lot of female engineers, and they're truly the most hardworking folk I've ever seen. Not to say that men aren't, but oftentimes to be heard in a room, to be listened to in a room, you really have to have your ducks in order, because you're kind of starting off in a losing game, and you have to win your respect. You need to win. It's not granted to you on arrival. So that's a difference that I see that makes women have to prepare more and have everything kind of, their entire storyline ready to go when asked a question or when presenting something. So that's the only difference I would say, but overall I don't think there's any difference in gender ability or capability.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. When I saw the question, I was like, I'm not sure it's really a female-male thing. So I guess I'm going to not answer your question and just give some advice, like you were doing earlier. I think that one of the things that I've learned throughout my whole career, working in some very male-dominated teams and industries, is as a woman, I worked with an individual, his name is Bob, and I had a phrase that a friend had lent to me, and she said, what would Bob do? So that's always in the back of my head, because Bob seemed to always get the accolades, Bob seemed to always get the promotions, Bob got more money, and the thing is it really frustrated me, but what I did is I was frustrated, but I learned from it too. So I think for especially all of you that are young women, there's a lot of things that I learned. Working harder is not necessarily the right thing. Working smarter is, and it took me a long time to learn that. I was on that hamster wheel for a long time thinking if I just worked harder, I would get ahead. I would get to where Bob was. But I had to learn, he was doing some things right. So and he was getting the accolades. So it wasn't that I had to become Bob, but I needed to learn, what was Bob doing right? Bob was a great relationship builder. I thought Bob spent a lot of time on the golf course, but he was a great relationship builder. He met the clients, he met customers, he sold deals. So those are things that I've learned over time. So if I can impart one thing on you, is that as you're going through your school here, as you're going through thinking about your jobs and stuff like that, don't be afraid to learn from others and be confident and the best thing that I could say with Bob is he was a good relationship builder. So I would say, learn how to network as part of your career here at BU. I know I didn't answer your question, but.
I think about this a lot, but especially kind of like this male-female divide, and where I think I can, best expound upon answering the question is to lead with compassion. And compassion being, traditionally speaking, a female sort of element, but I'm talking more of a new definition of compassion. Not so much what we traditionally think in terms of like Lady Diana, like, Queen of Hearts, or Mother Teresa. No one can be that way, right? We don't have the resources or the time or whatever it might be to reach that super high idealistic level of compassion, but I think it's more of how do you really think human first, and how do you really think for the long term? And that in itself is really important when it comes to thinking about being your own entrepreneur and being able to kind of build something for the long term that's going to last and that truly has purpose. Because if you're looking to really change how someone consumes something or how someone interacts with a product or service, you want to be able to change and transform for the long term, and you're using that kind of sense of compassion in a new modern way, which is around how is this bettering or creating a greater situation for the person who's using it, and then also this community that I'm creating. And so I'm always kind of thinking about how do we redefine what is male and female, and how do we think about not just those two binary things, but more like being superhuman first. And the most visionary leaders, I think, are able to kind of say, how am I changing humanity in my own sort of scope, and then hopefully it can kind of scale from there.
Thank you. So my last question, I know you all have already given us a lot of great advice, but last question would be, what is one advice that you want to give to future entrepreneurs?
Okay, I guess I'll try to say something. I think it's self-awareness, really. The strongest leaders that I have met are really able to kind of say, I know what my strengths are and I know what my weaknesses are. I'm going to play with my strengths and I'm going to hire for my weaknesses. And being able to kind of encapsulate that leadership quality of, I'm not going to know how to figure everything out, and I'm going to let that go and be cool with it, and hire those experts, talk to those people who can mentor me, and really kind of just like putting yourself out there, but redefining your own sort of sense of what does it mean to make authentic connections and really connect with people, and not necessarily, you know, going to every networking event, throwing out your pitch or your business card, but like, who is that like constellation of people that can really kind of help you get to where you want to be?
Tagging on to that, being an entrepreneur is super hard. Being an investor is easy. Honestly, you know, especially working with a lot of the teams that I'm working with, it's very hard. There's a lot of different things you're juggling, especially if you're a student entrepreneur, because you got a lot of things going on. I was going to say, you're going to hear no a lot, or you're going to hit a lot of roadblocks, or you're going to have to pivot, just like Janice is learning how to pivot in her current startup. She's had to do it over her career. But I think it's just having that resilience, and it's okay that you're going to be told no. It's okay that you may not get the funding, or you may not be able to, your product may not work, but just, you know, keep going. I just think that if you believe in your idea, and you surround yourself by people that are going to be your supporters and your champions, keep going.
I completely agree with the self-awareness part of things. I think it's really important to know your strengths and weaknesses, but on top of that, it's also really important to know what you like to do. Sometimes your strengths could be the things that you hate the most doing, and so having self-awareness around the pockets of work that really interest you, and usually an easy way to kind of see that in yourself and get self-awareness is when you have a to-do list and it's taking a very long time for one item. Know that that's not something you're interested in, likely. So, I think when you're making hiring decisions, if your company is in a growth stage, that's really important to hire in that way, because oftentimes what happens is it's a rushed process and you don't have a second to do self-awareness to actually hire accordingly. And if you know what you like and you know what your strength is, choose those, stay stable in them, and then hire for the rest of it. But it's really important to kind of augment the strengths and weaknesses with personal preference of work. And then second piece of advice is be inquisitive. If you're not inquisitive, you shouldn't be an entrepreneur, because you need to ask so many questions about whether it is your a product idea or a service idea that you have. You need to talk to potential customers and do user studies and understand like who would be your users and are they even interested in your solution. Also, if you have a solution in mind, this will help you verify that solution, because just because sometimes it's best to know that you've defined the right problem and your solution could be the best solution, but it's important to have the problem first and then talk to people and then be very willing to be flexible to change your solution. And this goes to the pivoting for sure. And as you go, ask a lot of questions. Ask questions to people who've done it, ask questions to the people that are doing it, and ask questions regarding the product and everything that it touches. The more questions you ask, the more clear your path will become. So continue to be inquisitive. There's no shame in asking dumb questions. I ask them all the time. All the time.
Okay, I guess the advice that I have, I agree with a lot of things that have been said, has to do with the idea of pivoting. And I think when you start a company and you have an idea and you've done all the data, you know, you've gone through and done all the work and talked to people and it's like, this is going to make it, I've got the idea. I think the best thing to do is one thing that you need to do too, is not just hug that tree. If you start your company and you start seeing the data's not, you know, data speaks, we're totally data driven, and the data tells you the truth. If you all of a sudden see that you can't get where you wanted to go, you can't get what you need, you have to say, you know, maybe this isn't the right approach. Let me see, maybe we need to pivot, maybe we need to change. Don't be so set in your idea that I know the way and this is the only way. And you will get, like, when I was doing one of my startups, everybody, so many people saw an application for our Layers app. Oh, you should do this, you should do this. You have to stay focused as to what you believe in, but yet not so focused that you don't at least, you know, hear all this input. Take it in. Is it valid? Is it something that I should take heed and change, or should I just let it go? So one end, you can't keep on changing based on everybody's piece of advice, but at the same time, when you see the data is telling you that what you're doing is not working, then you have to say, okay, maybe this isn't the right approach, and how do I change? Don't give up on it. Pivot, do something different, see what will work, and do some testing, talk to more people, like you were saying, network out there, find out. So just don't try to go for everything. It's a fine line. Don't try to go for every change that everybody tells you could help you with this widget or whatever you're building could work. Be focused and try to stay on track, but then also don't be so on track that you don't listen to people and get the advice when you see things going the wrong way.
Thank you. I'm going to open questions to the audience. Does anyone have any questions for our panelists?
As an entrepreneur and a female presenting in a room, how do you adjust to being the one who speaks up and says something, and then the room goes silent for a while, and then a guy talks and he says pretty much the same thing, and then that's a great idea, right? And you have this experience over and over to not get jaded. Like, what's the effective way of dealing with this, and how does that pan out when you actually decide to pitch or go to different customers?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, and then you can speak to it too. One thing, I know what you mean, how that happens. And one thing that, just personally, that I've done is add on to that, like, and, without being rude, that you, personally, you agree with that too, and then add another layer of value to see that potentially it's not all that he said. Now that's just one little trick, but it happens all the time, and you just, you can't let it, like most of my companies, only the company that I'm in now is 2 women co-founders. Every other one I was with males. And it would happen, and I just think you have to, just continue to voice your opinion and add on to what they say and show the value that you have, and see if you can get it. Not that that helps, but it's going to happen.
My approach has been a little bit more brash than that. I've definitely just said, that's exactly what I said, and looked at them straight in the face. But it really depends on your relationship. That's not always appropriate, especially like if there's a hierarchy, if they're somehow your boss or something along those lines. So I usually come out with saying like, oh, like I might have not done a really good job of explaining, but that's exactly what I meant with my previous statement. As per my last email thread that a lot of people have to do, I am on the, I think that your approach is totally fine and can be done, and in some situations should be done. It's about picking your battles. But also at times it's just like, it's important to call that out because it's just going to continue happening to other people and they're going to think it's okay to do it when they get that reinforcement. So I think that unfortunately there is a little bit of a, I think, responsibility that comes down to everyone, and it's also to the other people in the audience who are like potentially in the room. It's also like up to them to say like, actually, I think that's what she was saying. You know, like getting a good group of allies that can also point it out for you is good. So if you see this happening in a work environment, a student environment, call it out. Like that's what I could say like in a general sense. If it's happening to you, also call it out. Pick your battles, do it in a gracious way, or if you feel comfortable, say it in a brash way. Maybe that's not the best advice, but that's what I do.
Anyone have any other questions?
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for coming. I picked BU and Social Impact Program with Double Legacy and HBS. Been very fortunate in my entire life to be raised by a lot of really smart, powerful, strategic women such as yourselves. And great to see the staff here. My question is actually kind of the opposite of hers, where I've always been raised and feel that one should be an ally no matter what, whether it's your friends or your sister or your, you know, the goofy cousin that got adopted because someone dropped on his head, whatever it would be. You should always support your people that matter in your life. And so my question is, as a cis male white guy from Brookline, oftentimes I am misinterpreted as some kind of, you know, silver spoon kind of asshole, which I think I'm not, or at least try not to be. And so I've found, whether it's been with male investor panels or even female investor panels on both sides of the table, I've often been inappropriately labeled as either a whipping boy or as a target to be kicked in the shins. And so I'm wondering, what sort of skill sets might you be able to offer to prove, without, you know, self-aggrandization, how can I demonstrate to someone who doesn't know me that I'm an ally and that I'm not a threat in a business world, in an entrepreneurial world? Is that even a reasonable question? Thank you.
I was just going to say thank you. Thank you for being an ally. We need allies at the table. It's hard. It's definitely a hard question to answer. If you're asking you personally, how do
There's an archetype of a cis white hetero male who is an ally, a genuine ally.
Yeah.
How do you come across without being mislabeled as something like this?
Again, I think the more you can support everybody in the room, whether it's women or men, I'm sorry that if you're being treated that way. So I'm not really sure I have the correct answer for you, but look, we're never going to change the dynamics that happen in the world unless we have male allies, unless we're all on the same page. So continue what you're doing. Maybe you have more to add.
I just thought I needed to think about it. I didn't have. I think the easiest thing that could be done is showing interest in women's ideas and the commentary that they bring, and going off of like a yes and, like, in, you know, in improv they teach that. And also, when women speak in a room, just responding to what they say, it's just these like small kind of intricate things that sometimes just really don't happen. If you do them, I don't think anyone would be malicious enough to label you in any way. That would be my
I think it goes back to kind of like this human first compassion point that I was making. First, listen, as opposed to, you know, figure out like what is your talk to listen ratio. And then the questions like, how can I be helpful? Is always one that is just like, it almost disarms any sort of tension that you might be feeling with like these unconscious biases and all those strange dynamics that we step into in this world every single day. So just being like, I'm an open ear, I'm here to listen, how can I be helpful? And kind of just like laying out how you can be supportive in a way that is, you know, open and not crossing any lines also. Just like having that balance.
when you become an investor, invest in women.
Change the dynamics.
Anyone else have questions?
Sorry.
Thank you so much for coming. This has been an amazing experience. As someone who's like kind of getting into entrepreneurship, is kind of interested in entrepreneurship and learning how to network for the first time, it's been a little scary and a little like new waters, and I feel like a lot of anxiety when I try and network, and I'm not sure if I'm like pushing or pulling the right way. Like, how do you know when to push? How do you know when to like back off and give them space? So like, do you have any tips and tricks on like how to network and how to get into it and how to be successful with it?
So my advice to you, firstly, I think it's really great that you're here and you're asking these questions. You're already doing more than most do, so that's really good. The way that, it's weird, so I was born and raised in Turkey, a small little tidbit, and so I never looked at networking the way that America looks at networking. It feels very like, oh, like you have something that I want and I like have something you want, so it's this interaction. So not that that's always what's pushed, but it sometimes feels that way, the way that it's kind of marketed. The way that I see networking is really about building human connection, and I think you can never go wrong by having genuine interest in the person in front of you, not just from where they kind of tie to your business or your idea, but just as a whole human, and like, I guess like human compassion first really threads here too. I think when approaching those conversations, I think the internal dialogue, you need to always make sure that you're not rejecting yourself before you go into that conversation. And just leading through your heart and really genuinely caring about what the person is saying. And when listening, don't think of the next thing you're going to say, because your eyes will be doing a thing and people will understand that that's what's happening. But that would be my advice.
Yeah, I want to echo the last thing you said about listening. I think when you are in a situation where you're networking, you probably are thinking how do I open up the conversation? But then really key in and listen. You know, we don't get taught how to listen in any school. You know, I wish there'd be a course on how to listen and then respond to people. And you don't want, like it's a fine line, like you don't want to be thinking of what am I going to say next. Really listen and key in. You know, when I was going for money in other meetings with entrepreneurs, it was like, I didn't want to think of what I wanted to say next. I wanted to hear what they had to say. I had a narrative of where I wanted to go get through these things, but I really had to listen, because maybe my narrative was wrong. I had to listen to what they really said and how they respond to my first page in my deck, or the second page in my deck, or the third page, and maybe, you know, maybe I abandoned the deck. You know, you really have to key into people when you're networking. Understand, are they interested in what you're saying? You know, or do they want to hear something different? Or maybe they're not the right person, or is this person, do I go in deeper? Does this person really, are they interested? Look at them, see if their eyes are rolling. You know, but the whole listening and cues that they're given, I think will let you open up in a certain way and say something and stop and hear what they have to say, and then build on that.
I'll say networking can be really challenging, pretty scary. I absolutely agree with you. It's not one of my fun things to do. But I will say there's so many resources here that if you have an idea or if you want to talk to somebody about it, take advantage of the things in BevLab. Sign up for an office hour. It's a safe space. Somebody's there to listen to you, and it's a good way for you to practice that networking in a sort of safe space without a huge crowd around. Or so those are the things that I would try to do, and try to help you with that. So.
Well, first off, it's awesome that you're even here, because you know, kudos to you and taking that initiative and putting yourself out there. You could just be like at your dorm, or you know, getting a coffee with a friend, or anything like that. And I totally hear you about the anxiety point. I'm an introvert. And so after this, I'm going home and only talking to my dog until tomorrow's call that starts at like 10 or whatever. So I think you have to just like honor that and say, I'm going to embrace my anxiety when it comes to that, and know that there are other introverts in the world too that are probably dealing with the same thing. And it's even like scientifically researched upon that introverts are built chemically different. So that's just who we are. So don't worry about it. And know that other people are telling you that. There are different ways that you can kind of like even make a game out of it. You can say, I'm going to talk to the first person I see that's wearing red. I've gotten that advice before, and that's always kind of fun. Or just even think about like, how do you create that constellation of people that you have met in the past, new friends, maybe a different mentor or a favorite professor or something like that. It usually happens by chance. And so just be open to, maybe it's not going to happen at a networking event, maybe it'll happen while I'm sitting at the tea, waiting for the tea, or I'm like at the library. And just kind of be open to the connections that you can make and know that it's going to be serendipitous, and that's kind of cool.
One tip for you, ask for people's advice. They love giving it.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, so I'm Nada, and thank you for all your wonderful feedback so far. So I'm looking into going into like industrial design, product design, and so far my experiences, like connecting with what you said about like trying to fit in the balance between like being good at something and also enjoying it. Because I think it's really hard, because if I'm good at, I'm kind of like pursuing my second degree, and it's like I'm good at something, but I don't enjoy it, and that's why I'm doing my second degree. But it's kind of hard not to be boxed in of like, oh, you're not as good at this, you should do the first thing while you're trying to learn the second thing. And then if you have any advice on like how to like self-advocate for like you're still not quite confident about your skills, but you're learning it, that like weird in between state where you're learning a skill, so it can't be like, oh, like I actually really know this, but you can't be that confident about it, but you also don't want to be kind of like slowed down in your learning process. Do you have any like words regarding that?
I think giving yourself space and time is really important, especially if you're very self-aware with the fact that you really like it. I think it's really important to know that just because you don't have the full skill set now doesn't mean that you won't have it. So focusing on your potential could really help in this case. I personally struggled with a lot regarding actually mechanical engineering, which was my degree, and I went into a lot of design roles where I was told that I was not quick enough, I wasn't coming up with the best designs, I wasn't doing it the right way, and that really stifled. I really liked it. I really liked doing it. I clearly wasn't great at it, but the way that I kind of went around that is like every single time I was told something bad, I was like, okay, I need to really focus on the fact that this is not about my personality or my self-worth or anything. It's really about taking whatever feedback you get or give yourself, which is also self-talk is really important, as I say always. To kind of categorize it and say, okay, like this part is just the fat, like I'm not gonna worry about that part, but this part is actionable and I'm gonna get better at it, and once I'm better at it, it's just kind of creating almost like a to-do list of, okay, I wanna get better at this thing, I need to do this, 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 and then once you complete that list, the confidence comes naturally. So giving yourself space and time to learn something, you have to do something so many times to actually gain that skill. I'm still in the process of gaining skills. I'm not even close to knowing the things I want to know. So continue on being inquisitive and continue on developing and give yourself the space and time to do so.
Yeah, I think it, you know, it's great that you've got one thing and then you're more interested in another thing. I think it goes back to what I've said about passion, and you know, depends on who's telling you, hey, stay with this one, that's where you have the skill. You know, my response would be, yeah, but I'm not passionate about it, and if you're not passionate, you're going to lose interest. The minute things go the wrong way, you're going to, you know, feel like, I don't want to do this anymore, or I don't know whether it's a startup or whether you're working for a company or whatever you're doing, but the thing that you're passionate about, even if you don't have the skill set today, that's going to drive you to learn get those skills even quicker than it did for the first thing that you were working at. Because a startup, you are going to have so many ups and downs. It's highs, lows. It's a roller coaster ride. And if you don't have the idea that you love what you're doing, to get up every day and say, if it's a good day, it's a bad day, and just still plow forward, then, you know, you shouldn't be doing it.
I'm gonna open to one last question.
Thank you for all your answers, and I want to ask about forming a team and finding the people who have the same passion as you, especially for more like technical and engineering related startups. How do you balance the business and engineering side, and how do you just find the right people to cover everything in general?
Yes, hello. Firstly, merhaba, so in terms of finding the right team members, especially in kind of like the sales and engineering side of things, one, I'm going to go back to really know what you like doing. Don't hire someone that's going to do the work you like, because that's not going to go well for anyone. But I think it's really important to, so I went to a conference where a person that was also a serial entrepreneur and team builder spoke. And he said something that I never forgot. He said, the first 5 people that you put into your company will change the entire trajectory of what your company becomes. So it's really important to find skill sets that strategically make sense, but also people that you are able to work with and the dynamic is there and they believe in the mission and have similar passions to you. So, I mean, most kind of, I guess, actionable advice that I could give is if you are trying to build something, make a task list of what needs to get done and then categorize them according to what skill set that requires. And then as you talk to people within those skill sets and then find the best match that you can get. It's not going to be the case that you're going to find the perfect people. And also, if you're a sole founder or a co-founder, just know that the additional team members, if they're not in your founder's corner, they're not going to be ever as invested into the mission as you are. So treating them as valued employees and treating them as a part of your team and not just saying like, oh, of course you're passionate about this, you're in this company. Like, never lose sight of the fact that people joining your company believe in the mission, but you will always be kind of the root of it all. So with that in mind, that's how I would go about it.
I guess I would also say that, I agree that making a list, what are the skills, what do I have and what are the skills that I also need. I think prioritizing them and not going out and hiring right away is really key. Getting money, in this, at least in this environment, we're going crazy. The environment right now, I don't know whether you guys could add something to it, but we're feeling the environment's pretty crazy. And so if you don't need that person right away, if you don't need that skill set, it's like, what do you absolutely need to get your company from 0 to 1 and then grow it even further? So like when we were saying, okay, what do I need to get from 0 to 1? We just paid or gave people some equity and got minimal, we're like lean and mean, whichever one it is. But you know, just because you're going to need all those, don't get them all at once, bring them on at the right time. And that's also knowing when to bring them on.
I've observed this with the work that I'm doing with some teams. Recognize also, as you're bringing on people to work with you, that you're all going to have different styles of work. And that's okay, right? I think people get very frustrated because somebody's a morning person, somebody's an evening person, somebody likes to work, you know, plow through multiple hours, and just recognize how the different styles, and if you really only want to work a certain way, make sure you understand that person's style of work. And make sure that that's really clear, and because otherwise I think you're going to have some issues with that. So good luck. I'm sorry.
Okay, really quickly. In terms of building out like executive teams and then just thinking about different stages, it's probable that you will not have the same team that you started with. And that's okay. Another piece of advice is it's it's always helpful to understand what is the archetype of the person that I'm looking to fill this role, who is like the most expert, and understand that they're a unicorn and you probably will never find them. So you have to kind of like list out what are the trade-offs that I can take, that I need to have as like non-negotiable, and other ones that I can kind of just like, okay, I will look to hire that specific quality out for another person. Because as an example, someone isn't going to be super financially articulate and like artistic and understand brand and marketing and all at the same time. So you might have to separate out that function, and that's kind of just.
Well, everybody, can I get a round of applause for this rock star lady on the panel? And so this concludes the moderated discussion. I'm going to walk our lovely panelists out back and get their stuff. You can find them on LinkedIn on the event. And actually, all these ladies will be back here very soon, either in judges or for office hours. So just follow your email and watch updates from me, because I have all the networks and resources. And Emily here is going to lead a little bit of networking. I know we have a couple women entrepreneurs in the audience who want to talk a little bit about their business. So Emily's going to lead that little discussion right now. So everybody just say thank you one last time. We appreciate it. And then we'll have Emily kind of organize women entrepreneurs that want to share more about their business.